Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I'm Tish and I be Trouble. And if you are a returner, welcome back. Today we have Mask Monday and Chapter 14 of The Rise of the Deva'shi by Jennifer Alice Provost. So if you want to find out what happens in Chapter 14, stick around.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
Alright, like I said, we got Mask Monday and another chapter of our book. So we have Danielle Creations Ultra Nourishing Kiwi Face Mask with aloe vera, formulated with green tea and kiwi extract. I got this from Renee. Beauty and More with Renee here on YouTube. So we're going to grab this out. We're going to put on our egg or soup mask. And then we're going to get going on our story. Alright, this mask has kiwis on it and it smells so good. Plus, you know, the kiwi smell is kind of more of a pear smell. It smells a little bit like pears. But we're going to get going on our book. So, Chapter 14. Over the next 2 days, I only woke for brief periods, and true to his word, Aylmore never left my side. However, he also kept his word to Malia, and continued to force those foul, swampy teas down my throat. Beginning on the 3rd day, the hunters came to visit me to check on my recovery. Even Kieran stopped by briefly, and while Aylmore stood by the door the entire time, with his arms folded across his chest, he was very polite when they spoke. The 5th morning, I was elated to see Annetta arriving bearing a very unsteady Arknan on her arm. "I'm told we were poisoned," he croaked, and I remember all too well the sensation that my throat was full of sand. I offered him some water, which he drained in an instant, and we went to sit on the balcony where the cool breeze would calm his hot and dry ailment. They only stayed for a moment, as Arknan was still very weak, and as they left, Annetta advised Aylmore the Queen wished to see him. I promised I would be fine for a short time on my own, and with a kiss on my forehead, and the assurance that he would return as soon as possible, he went to see Ashera. While he was gone, I did my best to bathe and dress myself, although rebandaging my back was such a chore that I eventually just let it alone. I hardly fared better with my clothing, and I almost sent for assistance twice, but my dread at being sent back to the healer's ward was enough for me to struggle along. I managed to pull on a tunic and leggings, and when Aylmore returned, he found me fighting with my boots. He laughed softly as he knelt in front of me and placed them on my feet. "You were told not to exert yourself," he reproached. "Why didn't you just wait for me?" "I'm not exerting myself. I just cannot seem to bend far enough to reach my feet." He asked about the blood burn. Before I could protest, he lifted the back of my tunic and saw it was bare. "I will assume you wanted me to do this for you," he said as he gently salved the burn and wrapped a length of clean linen around me. As he deftly wound the bandage, I asked where he had acquired such skills. "Many injuries," he replied, "on both myself and others." He finished and tucked the loose ends under. "Is that better, love?" "Yes," I replied as I leaned back to him. I felt so small against him, as if I were a pebble against a great mountain. "You are such a big man," I said, comparing the size of our hands. "I never realized how big you are until you were in bed with me." I felt him stifle a laugh, and when I met his amused gaze, I flushed and looked away. "I understand your meaning," he said, kissing my forehead, "and I appreciate the compliment." I could not help but laugh with him, and he told me that the Queen wished to see all of the hunters right away. He helped me to my feet and held my arm as we made our way to her receiving chamber. As we entered the room, I saw the rest of the hunters were present, along with Herrick, all seated around the great square table. The prelate sat at the Queen's left, with 2 of the condare standing behind him. I did not know their names, as the soldiers tended to stay away from the hunters. Arknan was already seated, and I was grateful Aylmore allowed me to walk in under my own power. I took my place, noticing that the beast's tusks were in the center of the table, and when Aylmore had taken his seat at the Queen's right, she began to speak. Ashera began by stating what had happened to Arknan and I, and advised that her scholars were researching what this poison may be and how to counteract it. She went on to say that neither the scholars nor healers knew if the poison was some sort of hex or something as mundane as the demons poisoning themselves as we attacked them. Neither Arknan nor I could recall them consuming anything as we hacked them to bits, and we certainly did not detect any spellcraft present, not that we were looking for such things. The queen then explained our limited knowledge of these beasts and wondered what their presence foretold. Herrick then spoke, stating that we were no longer to engage any demons traveling with a beast, as they are too dangerous and most likely cannot be killed, and we were to leave them for the soldiers to deal with. Latera killed this one, Patishin pointed out while indicating the tusk. You should have seen her. She was amazing, Arknan added as he flashed me a weak grin. Herrick was about to reprimand them both for speaking out of turn, but an unlikely ally spoke up. Latera has killed others, added Kevyn. She killed the one that gored me and 2 others at the border. That was luck, stated Herrick, then attempted to turn the conversation back to his point. My lord Herrick, I beg your pardon, I interjected. Do I look lucky? All eyes turned to me. Sickly, weak me. Yes, he replied, his irritation with me apparent. You look lucky to be alive. My royal blood stirred within my veins, and it would not allow him to speak to me in such a condescending tone. I disagree, I said simply. I think I look like one who has been well trained, and has had much success against this new foe. You have not been trained to combat these creatures, he growled back. We do not know what they are or from where they originate, yet you claim to be skilled enough to defend us against them? He demanded, his fists clenched in anger. You alone have doubted my ability from the instant you set eyes on me. Even now, after I have been a huntress 4 winters, and the evidence of my victory over these creatures rests before you, you still find cause to doubt me. I beg to know what I have done to prejudice you against me. I did not raise my voice while I spoke to the prelate, and once the words were said, I calmly held his gaze. He opened his mouth as if to yell, but he quickly glanced around the table and saw every hunter staring at him in silent challenge. By all means, then. Go after any beasts you like, he hissed. My calm eyes regarded his angry ones until he looked away. Ashera, her own face an emotionless mask, continued. The new protocol, she said, is if any of you encounter a demon, with or without a beast, you are to report to the healers immediately. Whatever they are using to poison us works quickly, and the recovery is not pleasant, as Latera and Arknan will attest. No sooner were the words out of her mouth than Herrick was on his feet, stalking out of the room, like a punished child, as his captains rushed to keep up with him. The hunters got up slowly, first paying their respect to the queen and reassuring Arknan and I that we were looking better. Kieran stood watching at me for long moments, as if he would ask me something, until Elmar's harsh face chased him away. In a short time, only Finley, Anetha, Arknan, Elmar, and I remained with the queen. Forgive me, I said to Ashera, for the way I spoke. You were correct in challenging him. You and Arknan both displayed great skill, she said as she offered us an indulgent smile. I had forgotten that you are a king's daughter, and you spoke as such. Herrick needed those words said to him, grumbled Finley. He has been treating us as lower beings for too long, and his soldiers are beginning to follow his example. I will speak to him, Ashera said wearily. He is very arrogant, but also very loyal to me. I turned to Aylmer, who seemed too furious to speak. He felt my eyes upon him and loudly advised the queen I needed to rest, and he would see me to my rooms. Arknan declined Anetha's arm, and as his rooms were close to Ashera's, she allowed him to traverse the short distance alone. Finley made no move to get up, and I recalled the arrangement Elmar had shared with me. As I left, Anetha made a point of bowing to me and pledging her loyalty to Princess Latera. I had forgotten how few knew of my royal heritage, or that I was human rather than fae. As we re-entered my rooms and the doors swung shut behind us, Aylmar said, Please don't pick fights with one of the 2 people I can't order away from you. I fell into his arms, much more exhausted than I should have been after such a short meeting. Forgive me, I said. He is just so hateful. I know, he said as he kissed my forehead. He thinks of us as little more than barbarians. I would like to see his reaction to a great tusked beast, I said into his chest, my fatigue apparent in my voice. Elmar stretched out a hand, and fire burst forth into the hearth. As he sat on the floor before the crackling blaze, he nestled me into his lap. For once, I was too weak to protest, being handled like a baby. You need to stop pretending that you are strong, he said softly. I know you wanted to appear well in front of the others, but you do not need to pretend in front of me. I nodded, my head against his shoulder, and as I stretched my feet out to the fire, I drifted off to sleep. When my eyes reopened, I was in my bed, wrapped in what seemed to be every blanket and shawl in Tegerton. I heard voices across the room and strained to hear what they were saying. Herrick angered her, and she used all her strength against him, Elmar was saying. She fell asleep as soon as we returned, and quickly became cold as death. Her face and hands turned blue. She was so cold. The same has happened to Arknan, said a female voice. The matriarch assures me that this is part of their recovery, this loss of heat, which is why we need to keep them as warm as possible. Why don't we just dump Arknan in bed with the princess? They can share their body heat. This voice was certainly Anetha's. I fought my way to the top of the bedclothes and saw Elmar glaring at her, and the queen seated before the hearth. Oh, Anetha, you know I would rather share your bed, I said sarcastically, to which she raised an inviting brow. Ashera rose and glided to my bedside and placed her warm fingers against my cheek. You are frigid, child, she said. How do you feel? As if I've been packed in ice, I replied. I preferred being hot. Anetha brought me a cup of tea, not the disgusting teas from the healers, but real tea, and I gladly accepted it. How is Arknan? He's been returned to the healer's ward, she informed me, and I was about to order Elmar to return you as well. He seems to think that you will fare better here, under his watchful eye. Please don't make me go back, I begged. I detested that dreary chamber, full of smelly herbs and lumpy cots. Ashera looked at me, not with authority of a ruler, but with a mother's concern as she felt my cheeks again. I will not lose you, or Arknan, to this illness. You may remain for tonight, but if you are not improved by morning, I will carry you there on my back. I smiled at my queen, grateful for her leniency. I will be here by second dawn to learn of your progress, Ashera said while she and Anetha walked toward the door. As Elmar accompanied them, I saw the queen whisper a few words in his ear. The door swung shut, and he returned to my side only to pull off his boots and then his shirt. What are you doing? I asked. The queen has ordered me to keep you warm, he said as he climbed into bed, and I intend to follow her to the letter. He drew my back to his chest and wrapped his arms around me, all the while murmuring in my ear that I could sleep, that he would not leave my side. I made him promise to keep me in my chambers. As he swore he would not return me to the healer's ward, my eyes grew heavy and I sank into his arms. Initially I did rest, but as the night wore on, all heat seemed to leave my body. I tried not to alert Elmar as I moved closer to him for warmth, but he was so shocked by my icy fingers and how I had begun to shiver. He rubbed my arms and legs in an attempt to generate enough friction to heat my frozen limbs, but to no avail. Elmar became frantic, and as my shivering changed to rampant shaking, he scooped me up. The bedclothes wound around me and placed me in front of the hearth. A fire sprang forth at his command, and he put me as close as he dared. Sparks leapt out and caught the coverlet, causing it to smoke and crackle. He stamped it out with his bare hand and turned my back to the fire, holding my face to his chest as he shouted for it to burn hotter. I opened my eyes again to find that I was not cold. I felt like I had been cold for so long, for a much longer time than I had been at that frigid border, and far colder than I had ever been. My face was in the hollow of Elmar's neck, with my legs drawn up to his chest, and his arms encircled me. His hair had fallen across my mouth, causing me to sputter rather than breathe, and he looked down at me. "Are you warm?" he asked as he brushed the hair from my face. His beautiful eyes were wide with concern and fear, and I wondered yet again if he had slept during the night. "I think so," I replied, "for as much as I can remember what warmth is." I tried to stretch, but he would not move, his arms keeping me close against him. "No," he said firmly. "It isn't yet first dawn. You cannot rise until the sun have risen. It will be too cold for you otherwise. I looked at my balcony, and for the first time since I had occupied these rooms, the doors were closed. When I got up to shut them last night, you started shivering, he said, following my gaze, and it was all I could do to warm you afterwards. I put every cover I could find on you. I rubbed your hands and feet. I made the fire burn as hot as possible. I thought I'd have to put you in the fire, but after a time, you stopped shaking and curled up like a sleeping kitten, and you've been calm ever since. He let me move my hands to his face, and I gently traced his cheekbone with my fingertips. I owe you my life, once again, I said. He took my hand and moved it lower to his left leg, and I felt the smooth, raised skin of a scar. I have owed you mine for some time, he said, as he moved my head across it. Does it still hurt? No. I had a girl with me, the loveliest girl I've ever seen, who looked after me while I was injured. But then she tried to feed me the most awful food I have ever tasted, and I wondered if she was a spy sent to poison us all. I laughed, remembering the stew I had tried to make for dinner. To this day, Luth tells the story of Latera's dirt soup. He kept my hand over the scar, and I suddenly realized we were both naked. Forgive me, he said, reading my shocked expression, but the best way to share warmth is skin to skin. Languidly enjoying the feel of his skin, I brought my hand up his side and felt the other scars he bore from his many years as a hunter. My fingers came to a long, jagged one across his ribs, and I asked him what caused it. I imagine it must have happened in a great battle, possibly from a demon raking its claws across his side. It was nothing like that, he said, as he smiled ruefully. I was walking through the forest and stumbled, landed on a dead branch. It wouldn't have healed so badly if I hadn't taken care of it myself out of embarrassment. You are so proud, First Hunter, I said, while rubbing the scar with my palm. Then I drew the coverlet away from his side and gently kissed it. He closed his eyes, making a soft sound as I pressed my lips to his skin, before raising me back to his eye level. You are not to move, he said sternly, tucking the fur around my chin, and not to remove any of these coverings, not until I am certain that you will not be chilled again. I nestled against his chest, happily resigned to my fate. Yes, my lord, I said, just to rankle him. After a time, he let me stretch my limbs, as long as I remained under the piles of blankets. I felt as if I had not moved for in years. He quickly pulled me back to him and pressed the length of me to his side. I sighed, knowing that resistance would be utterly useless, and laid my head on his chest so I could listen to his heart. How can you remain here with me? I asked. Who is looking after the other hunters? They are grown. They can look after themselves, he replied. What I mean is, how can the first hunter remain here for 5 days, neglecting all of his duties for one sick girl? Elmar turned to his side, his face so close to mine I could feel his breath as he spoke. We have all stopped what we are doing, holding our breath while you and Arknan recover, he said, holding my hand beneath the blankets. I don't think you realize the serious nature of these events. In Ashera's long reign, a hunter has never been poisoned by a demon, and her scholars cannot find any reference to demons ever having used poisons. This, coupled with the appearance of the beast, could very well signify a new foe, one worse than any demon. As for why I remain to care for you, Anetha and Surya have been assigned to watch over Arknan. I assume he would prefer them over me, he said with a wry grin, and I laughed in spite of myself. Then Finley must be overseeing your obligations, I said. Finley is seeing to the Queen, he corrected, with the added benefit of annoying Herrick with his presence. He placed his hand on my neck, bringing me even closer. None of us are doing anything except trying to find out whom or what has done this. He kissed my forehead as I moved closer to him, and the lack of pain surprised me. I believe the burn has healed, I said in disbelief, for I was starting to think I would remain an invalid forever. Elmar asked to see it, and I sat up, clutching the coverlet to my breast. His finger gently touched the small of my back, and a pleasant shiver ran down my spine. Misinterpreting my reaction, he snatched me back to his chest and wrapped us both in the thick fur. I whispered that I did not shake from a chill, but rather his touch, and began to nuzzle my neck. "You have ruined me, you know," I said, enjoying his attentions. "A handful of days ago I had never shared a bed with anyone. Now I see you whenever I open my eyes. I don't know if I want to be well if it means giving this up." "You could never be ruined," he said, as he guided my face to his. "I am not leaving you as long as there is the slightest chance you remain ill, and once you are well, I will remain as long as you'll have me." He kissed me tenderly, his strong hands holding me firmly against him. I placed my arm around his neck as I laid my head on his shoulder and saw sunlight around the edge of the balcony doors. "It is after first dawn," I whispered into his ear. "The Queen will be here soon." He released me and turned his back while I rose. After last night, I thought he was being needlessly gallant, but his kind gesture brought a smile to my lips as I hurriedly searched for clothing. I decided upon a simple black dress that was sleeveless and draped from a stiff collar around my neck, leaving my shoulders and back exposed. My past experience with blood burns had taught me that while the burn had healed, my skin would remain hypersensitive for a time, and even soft fabric would feel like teeth raking across my flesh. As I fastened the collar, I retrieved Aylmar's clothing and found the remains of my own. "I would like to make a request," I said, as I brought him his clothes, "that you stop shredding my wardrobe to bits." "I had to tear them from you," he said as he pulled his shirt over his head. "I thought you were freezing to death, and I didn't have time to fumble with buttons and fastenings." He stood to put on his leggings, and I quickly turned to stare into the fire. In another moment, he was behind me, caressing my bare arms with his hands. "You should be more covered than you are," he murmured into my hair. "I don't want you to be cold." "So warm me," I said as I placed my arms around his neck and kissed him, trying to show him what it meant to me that he cared for me, what he had meant to me all along. Aylmar wound his fingers into my hair and responded with the passion he held in check while we were wrapped in the bedclothes. Again his gallantry touched my heart and made me want him even more. He lifted me in his arms. I had learned not to protest these past few days, for not only had he become my main source of strength, but I was starting to enjoy it when he carried me and sat us in the chair next to the fire, placing me in his lap. His mouth left mine to caress my shoulders, while his hand caressed my back, carefully avoiding the newly healed burn. He softly murmured of how he loved me, how he wanted to make me truly his, and I answered that I already was. He began to ask me something else, but he was cut short by a knock at my door. "Can we ignore it?" I whispered hoarsely into his neck. "No," he replied, "it's the Queen." Aylmar stood while keeping me in his arms, then returned me to my seat before the fire. He replaced the fur across my lap, then tossed a shawl over my shoulders and went to admit Kshoie to my chambers. Two Saphira followed their ruler, one bearing a pot of something hot, the other with a platter of bread and fruit. The platter was set on the low table close to the hearth, while the pot was placed on the stand next to the fire. The girls departed, and Kshoie took a seat next to me. "How is Arkton?" I asked. Once I assured her I had come through the evening quite well. "He has not fared as well as you," she replied, her face troubled. "He is still cold to the touch, but he is no longer shaking. Anetha and Syria set small braziers on each side of his bed to warm him." She looked at the tangled knot of blankets before the hearth as she continued, "I see you employed a similar tactic." "Yes," Aylmar said as he stepped toward us. "The fire was a great solace to her." He sat across from me, and I hope he realized that he was my great solace. The fire was merely an addition to his own warmth he so selflessly gave me. Kshoie indicated the platter set before him. "Eat," she said. "You must be starved by now." He took a piece of fruit and offered it to me, but the Queen held up her hand. "This is for you alone, Aylmar. Malia has given me strict orders that Letaire is only to have the contents of this pot, whatever they may be. As you know, even I will not disobey her," she concluded, her eyes twinkling. I attempted to rise and investigate the pot, but Aylmar leapt in front of me, telling me with a stern glance that I was not to move. He filled a small bowl with the hot liquid and brought it to me, making a sour face as the steam reached him. "I am sorry for you. This smells worse than the teas," he said as he placed it in my hands. I made a similar face as I drank the acrid broth, but my body seemed to crave it, and I drained the bowl in one draught. I jealously watched as Aylmar tore himself a piece of bread, and he and the Queen began to discuss matters of state. Ashera asked if anyone had volunteered to be the unknown in the trial, and I looked up in some surprise. I had not realized it was time for the trial by combat, and I began to feel like a recluse in my chambers. Aylmar advised her that Luth had, as well as Surya. He felt either would be a good choice. He went on to state that he did not want any of Herrick's soldiers participating, to which Ashera agreed. She asked whom he would prefer as the unknown, and Aylmar unexpectedly suggested Kieran. "He is quite skilled," he told the Queen, "and mature enough to realize he will be facing a neophyte, not a seasoned warrior, and will adjust his attack as such. If we sent Surya, I don't know that she would show the same restraint." I remembered my own trial, and the great force Aylmar used to swing at me, and wondered if he had tried to restrain himself. "Then it is decided," she said. "I will have Finley inform him, as I assume you will remain here with your charge." The Queen smiled at me, then remarked that I looked quite flushed, and she may have Arknan sent to my chambers to receive Aylmar's attentions as well. I felt my cheeks grow hot as I blamed my healthy glow on the soup. Ashera, sensing my embarrassment, said that she was glad to see me improved, and that she would send Anetha with further instructions from the matriarch by midday. Aylmar walked her to my charmed door, which was becoming quite a burden for him, and she again whispered a few words to him as he nodded in reply. "Did she give you further orders about me?" I asked as he took the empty bowl from my hands and again settled me into his lap. "You still run the risk of losing heat, so you are to stay covered at all times. You must eat all that repulsive soup, and once you have, I'm to retrieve another concoction that will probably smell just as bad, if not worse. And," he concluded in all seriousness, "I need to not let you out of my sight or out of arm's reach, for if anything happens to you when I have just now been able to be with you, I fear I would not recover." He smoothed my hair from my face and gazed at me with a mixture of concern and devotion. I laid my head on his shoulder and thought that this poison was a small price to pay to have him near me. We remained before the hearth until midday, when Anetha arrived, and he was called away to act as first hunter again. Alright, next chapter will be chapter 15, which will be next Monday. So, how are we feeling about the story? I am glad they are not giving too much spicy content. I was worried there for a minute. This mask feels awesome, and my skin has soaked up every little bit of moisture it possibly can. Oh yeah, this is really nice. Danielle Creations. I will have to remember that. I'll have to ask Renee where she got it, because it's very nice. All right. So this is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. I have a playlist linked below in the description box. Go check them out. Go see what they got going on for their Masked Monday. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All that good stuff is below. I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the